Greetings, fellow carbon-based bipeds. I am Scott Rose, and you are watching Explosions and Stuff. Today, I'll be reviewing the 1995 film Steel Frontier, starring Joe Lara, Bo Svensson, Stacey Foster, and Kane Hodder. An overview of the film? In a post-nuclear world, a gang known as the Death Riders is trying to take control of everything. After they invade the small town of New Hope, a drifter known as Yuma arrives and asks to join their ranks. Then, for some unknown reason, he begins to systematically pick the gang apart one by one. The pros of this movie? Well, first of all, this movie started, the very first scene of this movie was just this guy laying in the desert. And when it opened, you just saw this mass of blood and flesh and cloth. And you don't know what it is. And then it kind of slides up, it scrolls up, and you see, oh, it's a person. And he doesn't have any legs. And he's still alive and moving. And it was just fantastic looking. I loved it. I honestly think they just took a guy who didn't have any legs, put him in ripped pants, put some fake blood on there, and told him to lay in the desert and ask to die while they filmed it. It was a great choice. Instead of trying to use some fake not their legs, they actually got a guy who didn't have legs. I loved that part. Also, at one point in the movie, I'm sitting there, and I'm like, wait a second. Does that guy have a Jason Voorhees mask on his hat? Wait a second, is that guy with the Jason Voorhees mask, is that guy Kane Hodder? Turned out it was Kane Hodder. And for those of you who don't know, Kane Hodder is primarily known for playing the role of Jason Voorhees. So little Easter eggs like that, I just love that kind of thing. This movie also had great set design. It looked fantastic. The town looked like they just threw it together with things that they had. Like there were people living in an old airplane, and the cars were just beat up and thrown together. Half of them didn't have a rear end. It was just a frame and some seats, and it went. It was great. The action scenes in this movie were also really good, just start to finish. They were non-stop action from the moment the action scene started to the moment the action scene ended. It was just fantastic. Tying to that, part of what made it so good was that these movies had great practical effects, great blood squibs, great explosions. They just looked fantastic, and they were actual real effects. And they just made the movie what it was. These action scenes were made by these great practical effects, and I loved them. The cons of this movie? Well, first of all, it just seemed like the costumes were too clean. Like, here we are in this dystopian future. You have these people living in the middle of the desert, water is scarce, and yet they're wearing pristine white clothing, which is perfectly clean. No. If water is that valuable, you're not going to waste it washing clothes. You're going to drink it and filter it and use it to keep yourself alive, not to keep your whites looking whiter. No, that was unbelievable, and that really took me out of the movie. Also, as much as I loved the action scenes, the hand-to-hand fight scenes were just bad. I mean, they were great, they were choreographed very well, they weren't executed very well. Like someone would swing a punch and clearly be at least 6 inches away from the person they were supposed to be punching. It's like, no, that's clearly you made absolutely no contact. That was a fake punch. At least try to make it look realistic. Joe Lara played the primary character. He played Yuma in this. And he really felt like a poor man's Lorenzo Lamas. Which is weird because it wouldn't have been that expensive to get Lorenzo Lamas in the movie. But they couldn't afford him, so they went with this guy instead. He really had two emotions throughout the entire movie. Bored and constipated. No, Not the best choice. He was absolutely uncharismatic and just couldn't. He shouldn't have been in that movie. Not at least not in the lead role. Maybe as like a supporting or like one of those guys whose name you don't even know and don't care about. He would have been good in that kind of role, but not as your main hero, not as your protagonist. Also, I felt that the scenes between the action sequences just kind of dragged on. This movie was an hour and 40 minutes. It really shouldn't have been that long. It had no business being that long. They really should have cut it off at an hour and a half, maybe hour 25. But absolutely in no way should this movie have been longer than an hour and a half. They needed to cut at least 10 minutes off of that to make this movie better. My biggest gripe about this movie, though, is that it really was just a stereotypical dystopian future movie. Like, things happened because they're supposed to happen in that genre of movie. Not because the plot needed them to, but because this is what's supposed to happen. No. Just come up with a good plot. My favorite action scene of this movie? The opening action scene of this movie when the Death Riders are invading New Hope for the first time. The leader of the gang just walks into the barber shop and he's like, yeah, I want a shave. Give me a shave. So he sits down in the barber's chair. Barber starts lathering up his face and starts shaving him with a straight razor. Meanwhile, outside the barber shop and in the main square of the town, there's gunshots going off and explosions and people are dying and machine gun fire and people going through windows. It was great. All the while, the barber just had to be nice and careful shaving the face so as to not to cut the main evil guy of the movie. It was just fantastic. I've never seen a scene like that before. I'd love to see a scene like that in another movie. It was fantastic. My overall thoughts on this movie? While this movie did have some great action sequences, a lot of it just seemed to drag on. I give this movie the Zangief. There's nothing about this movie that really makes it stand out from all of the other dystopian future movies out there. It really does feel like a bad attempt at capitalizing on Mad Max's popularity. Now, I didn't hate this movie, I just didn't care about it, and for that reason, I can't recommend it to anybody. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like it and subscribe to my channel for new action movie reviews posted every Friday. Also, if you have any recommendations for movies you would like me to review in the future, please leave them in the comments below. Thank you and have a nice day.